Today, we're taking an inside look at the life of Jakub Kasuba, the unstoppable PFL 2023 European champion. He's not only crushing it inside the cage, undefeated, but also in his 9-to-5 as an auditor in the state of Florida. We're going to examine how he's gearing up to defend his title in Glasgow, September 28th on the DAZN for the new PFL European Series. You're not going to want to miss this one. And if you're enjoying this content, please give me a follow, like, subscribe. Always looking forward to getting feedback in the comments as well. Now, let's get it. Welcome back to Fight Capital, where we enter the ring of combat sports business. I'm your host, Ryan Rappaport. Today, I'm lucky to be joined by Jakub Kasuba, who is a rising star in MMA and the undefeated PFL Europe lightweight champion. He's known for his relentless style and impressive performances during last year's PFL Europe season. Balancing his career as a full-time auditor for the state of Florida, Jakub's journey in combat sports showcases his dedication both inside and out of the cage. He is set to defend his title on September 28th in Glasgow, Scotland for the kickoff of PFL Europe 2024 playoffs, and I'm excited to chat with him today. Thank you for joining me today, Jakub. How are you and where are you joining from?
I'm good. Thank you, Ryan, for having me. I'm home in Jacksonville, Florida, sunny Jacksonville, Florida, just enjoying my Friday, and I'm happy to be talking to you. So thank you for the invite.
Likewise, man. I'd love for you just to walk me through your journey into martial arts and how you ended up becoming a combat sports athlete.
I've been training martial arts with my father since I was little. I remember, 10 years old, starting to do boxing pads with him in the kitchen, and then using the kitchen to do correct steps, laterally and from there, we just did Taekwondo, and we competed heavily in Taekwondo from 10 to 12 years old. Now at 12, we decided to go kickboxing, and we joined the kickboxing gym. And then we would throw in wrestling clubs twice a week. And then in high school, I wrestled. And then when I was in wrestling, I was doing boxing tournaments or kickboxing tournaments. So I've always been in it, and I've trained and competed in individual, combat sport aspects, like boxing, kickboxing, and wrestling. And at 18, it was just, I know too much, so I got to do MMA, right?
Yeah. Well, I know you've been competing in Europe. And I forgot to mention, congratulations. I know you just got married, and was that in Poland where you just had the wedding?
Yeah. So we got married in the States last year between the Berlin and Paris fight in the States. But then we had a good old proper wedding in Poland, in June. So it was cool.
Well, how did you end up in PFL Europe? And talk to me a little bit about how you're preparing to defend your crown come September 28th.
I remember I had a solid career for Combat Night, and I was the lightweight champion there. And after, 7 or 8 fights, I was 7 or 8-0. It was time to advance. It was just a matter of how we're going to advance. And it was, my last fight for Combat Night, I think, was November 2021, I believe. And then it was, or 2022. And then it was just a matter of, do we go Contender Series? Do we go PFL? Who's going to offer us? But PFL Europe offered us a spot because I got Polish citizenship. I consider myself Polish, so it was the first real good offer, for 100,000. I was like, hell yeah. And I bid it, and I took it, and I won it.
Yeah, it was an impressive run too. And a shout out to Steve from Ruby Sports and Entertainment, your agent, for setting this up. One of the things that I've seen him comment on before is just the amazing job that Mitch Chalamet and Combat Night MMA did to help build you up in Combat Night. In my opinion, one of the premier local promotions in the world. Talk to me a little bit about that experience on the regional scene and what that meant for your career and growth as an athlete.
Yeah, it's a great regional spot. It's local, so it's nice I don't have to travel too far. I was still competing when I was in school. And we just had great communication with them. We could take a fight whenever we wanted to. And, they would import a lot of guys, which was nice. So we got a lot of tough competition. I'm very thankful. It was fun fighting for them. And there's no difference fighting the local, regional versus, European championship, right? Like there really isn't.
Well, I
At
think
least for
that's
me.
a surprising amount of talent coming out of Combat Night, obviously.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of good guys. I mean, Florida in general is just a fucking hot spot for great athletes and great MMA fighters. So it's just there will be many more coming out, which is nice out of Northern Florida, right? Because that's what I feel like Combat Night represents is Northern and Central Florida, where there's a lot of great athletes who get to shine because of it.
Yeah, well, you were already in the mix with PFL when they had that Bellator merger, and I know that we've coming up on almost a year now that that's happened. Could you just talk to me a little bit about when that happened, how you kind of saw that affecting your future opportunities and career path with the PFL?
Yeah, so with PFL, the plan was, if you win this tournament, you fight on the global tournament. So that was originally what was supposed to happen. But then, right, by the time I fought for the championship, the merger already happened. So they pretty much said that I'm not gonna fight in the global one because they're getting a lot of the Bellator guys into the PFL $1 million tournament, which was cool with me. I was happy to sit back and compete and get better in the European stage and win another 100 grand. I feel like the 100 grand is guaranteed for me. The million, that's tough. I mean, even looking at this tournament, those guys are good. So from the business side, I like to get paid. So
Yeah, I was just actually out in DC this last week at the playoffs, man, and the competition's fierce, and the turnaround is always super hard as well, man. If there's
yeah,
one thing I hear from the coaches and the athletes is like, how the hell do we save ourselves and like really make ourselves? But just reflecting on that journey through the PFL season that you had last year, what are the key lessons that you learned that you'll be bringing around to the cage this time? Hey, everyone, quick favor to ask. Did you know that nearly 80% of the people tuning in right now aren't subscribed yet? That subscribe button down below is what powers me every week to keep putting out these podcasts. Big shout out and thank you to everyone that's been supporting me for this. I couldn't do it without you. If you're enjoying the content, please subscribe below. It means the world to me. And for everyone supporting me, thank you so much. Now back to the show.
I mean, you never go in the cage 100%, right? There's always some ailment problem. You gotta be a great athlete, not a fighter, because you gotta do everything correctly. Diet, massages, recovery. You gotta do it all perfectly because there's not a lot of room for error. Gotta be kind of conservative, right? You can't die every single session just because it's back to back. And yeah, you gotta be smart. So I like it because I'm a hard worker and I'm good at cutting weight, so I can do these back to back. Well, some guys I don't think can, and it's hard to be a weight bully just because they're so back to back, right? So it's more people who walk around the weights, right? You don't fight once a year, maybe twice a year. I mean, shit, I pretty much fought 4 fights in 8 months. I had a fight in every 2 months. My first break was now from March 8th I fought to now, so that was the longest break I had in a year essentially.
Well, you mentioned the word smart, and one of the things that I love, and just kind of pulling back the curtain here, is just the level of intelligence of a lot of the athletes that are competing in MMA these days. And I think there's a lot of the casuals kind of have this own kind of perception of what an athlete is. But you're also a full-time auditor in the state of Florida, as I mentioned. How do you balance that demanding career and being a CPA, or if you are a CPA certified at this point? Oh, congratulations.
Oh, thank you.
But that on top of the rigorous training schedule, professional fighter. I mean, how are you balancing that today?
Yeah, I mean it's tough. I'm not gonna lie, it's tough. It's a lot of grinding, but I'm happy that my job gives me the flexibility to take time off whenever I need to. So that's a plus, right? I got good health insurance through the state, so I go to the doctor whenever I need to. I check up every little thing. Well, some of my friends, unless their hands or feet are falling off, they ain't going to see the doc.
Yeah, one of the big problems in competitive sports. Hopefully, PFL is on the way of fixing that as well. I think if there's one good thing that Jake Paul has brought into the conversation, it's the insurance for athletes and whatnot.
I mean, we're contractors, right? So we need a union in this regard because they're not going to employ us. We have to become their employees for us to get health insurance from whichever fight federation would provide it, right? So I think it's more about a contractors union that we would need. But with managers in the mix and all the different personalities, good luck with that.
Yeah, it's one of the things, man. I have a feeling that will change. I'm a big proponent of making sure that the athletes are well taken care of, not just financially, but mentally, physically. And I
Hmm.
think that's the kind of next evolution as you look at all the other global professional sports and as MMA is kind of growing internationally as it is as the top growth sport. As someone who's kind of involved in financials, what advice would you give to other fighters about financial planning and the business strategy in combat sports?
I mean, I like what I did. I went to college. I got a degree. I got a job, right? So I've always have a backup plan because in fighting you can get injured and not come out for a fight, and you lose that paycheck, you lose that bread. But so I would just say have a backup plan, right? And if you're smart enough, I mean, being a good, graduating college is kind of like being a fighter. You just go through the motions, you study, you train, and you pass the tests, right? So it's nothing really, special. You just got to sit down and kind of, it's not as physical, right? But the process is very similar in becoming great in it or advancing in it. So yeah, I would just say, have a plan, have another job. I guess physically, it'd be hard if you do have a physical job. I don't know how some dudes, do construction then train. That's crazy, especially in Florida. It's hot as balls.
Yeah, I have a friend of mine who's down there. He's always talking with the younger guns. He's like, please do not make this your only option. It's
Yeah.
like, have a backup plan. It's not to say that you can't have those goals and achieve those. One of the things I always like looking at too is the sponsorship side of things. Can
Hmm.
you share your approach to securing sponsors and the importance of those partnerships, especially for an upcoming fight that's going to be on across the zone in a global platform like that?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's a bit difficult because I fight in Europe, and the fights are not really streamed in the US. Sometimes, like the one in Paris, they streamed it on YouTube in the States, but other than that, it's hard for me to get American sponsors because they don't care for advertisements in Europe. Um, and then Poland, for example, they don't advertise in the European market. They only advertise for KSW, which is the Polish market, because that's all Polish people watch. Polish people don't
Mm-hmm.
even watch UFC that much. They watch KSW, which is their federation. So overall, I have a pretty big problem with sponsorships. But the way I get them is locally, right? For people that will just want to support me, not even expand their business. They want a nice tax write-off, and they want to help me, right? So that's how I do it, and it's a nice little extra side income, but nothing special, but it helps.
I never, I can't believe of all the time I've been doing this. It never just occurred to me. You get a tax write off for as a business expense as
Yeah,
advertising and
market.
marketing. Yeah, yeah, no, it's good. And, I always a lot of the local, regional, even larger names too. I always like to harp on, hey, if you're a local business, support your local athletes. And I
Yeah.
think it's always surprising to businesses how much fans and just people resonate with combat sports athletes and fighters, and I think they're like some of the biggest assets. I know a friend of mine who sponsors Andre Arlovsky was just had him out at the at the NFL Hall of Fame, and you had NFL Hall of Famers walking up to him and being like, "Oh, let's get a photo,"
That's
which is
cool.
he's like, "How does anyone know this guy?" It's like he's Andre Arlovsky. Come on, man.
Everyone Arlovsky, man. I used to love watching Andre Arlovsky, dude. I was like my favorite guy in the UFC back in the day just because he was Eastern European. I was like, oh, he's badass. Him and Krokop were my favorite.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, looking forward, what are some of your goals for both personal development, both as an athlete in the cage and out of it?
Uh, I guess my goals are just to be healthy and keep, being consistent, keep training, and keep fighting. Right, get those fights in. I'm gonna be turning 30 next year, so I got maybe 6 to 8 years at the top for my career. So just make the best of them, and then become as popular as I can get, and it will be nice. Hope I'll win this tournament. I'll fight in the States, and then I can get some really nice sponsors, right? Because that's where I'll be making the money. Is if you fight on ESPN, PFL, World Tournament from the sponsors. So that's what I want, and win that $1 million. So that's the goal.
Yeah, I will say the PFL does a great job of working with the athletes when they're in the Champions Tournament to get them sponsors, whether it's Takedown, Celsius, Dude Wife.
Mm-hmm.
So really looking forward to seeing you in that mix as well. And as we're coming up not too far from the finals coming up here as well. Before we get going, any sponsors or supporters that you'd like to give a shout out to?
Well, my friend TK is sponsoring me for this next fight with his firm Grappler. So they're like a grappling jiu-jitsu magazine that they have,
Mm-hmm.
and a bunch. And he was a PJ in the Air Force, so there's like Air Force Special Forces. So his and a bunch of his buddies are just throwing in money to put their logo on my fight shorts, which is cool. So $2,000 goes a long way for me. So I'm very excited for it. So I thank them for it, and I want to give them a shout out.
Yeah, and also kudos to the PFL for giving you guys that option as well, even with the merchandise, or not the merchandise, the equipment sponsors that they have with Takedown. I love that they still leave that spot for you guys, right?
Sponsorship logos is cool. So that's really nice.
Yeah, man. Well, really excited to see you back in action in 28 days now.
Yes,
wishing you a safe rest of camp as you wrap everything up and start cutting weight, and looking forward to seeing the results September 28th in Glasgow, Scotland on DAZN.
Thank you, Ryan, for having me. Cheers.